Hello and welcome to our fourth and final charcoal Bellringer. We are working on having smooth texture today, so you'll ask yourself at the end, does your shading fill in the paper texture completely? So that means that we don't have any grainy spots, that it's all been perfectly smoothly blended out with your blending stump. So we are going to get started on your value scale. Go ahead and turn that to the side. We're adding our lines on either end. We're dividing it in half, and each of these two halves we are going to add 2 lines so that we have 3 even spaces within. Now we are going to label them. So we are going to write 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's go ahead and spin it so our value scale is closest to us, and we are filling in value number 5 with a completely solid black outline first. Once you've got your outline, including those little corners, so work really hard to get those corners filled in up at the top, and then you are filling the remaining space in value 5. Next, we're going to hop down to value 3, and we are coloring just as lightly as you can with the charcoal pencil. So just barely touching the paper. We want to just barely let it graze the paper at all. Now we are trying to bridge the gap. So for value 4, we want it to be darker than value 3, but lighter than value 5. So just a nice medium tone in between these two. We also want to make sure that we don't leave like a stark outline from value 5 or from value 4. So I'm just adding a little layer right at the base of those sections. Next, we're going to pick up our blending stump and we are going to clean it off. We never know who is using this before, so it might be very dark. Notice this one had a lot of value on it. So we are just cleaning that off first. Next, we're going to fill in value 1 with the lightest value that we can create with our blending stump, and we want to help it fade out to value 0 super smoothly. So we're just barely dusting it. I might clean it off once more just to help fade that line out so that there's no division between the white and the gray. Now I'm going to press a little harder for value 2, and because I've cleaned off my blending stump, I might need to steal a little bit from value 3 to help fill value 2 in to be dark enough. So we are just filling in value 2, and now we are going to work our way up the value scale, starting on our lighter side and working towards the dark side. Remember that a problem that students face here is that they color too hard with their blending stump and it removes too much of your black. So as we're working in this darker area, press lighter. You barely are touching the paper here. We want to just get rid of that texture, blend it so it's a nice smooth transition, and then stop. We don't want to go too much with this because it will steal the black from that layer. Now I'm going to work my way back down the value scale once more, clean my blending stump off so I don't go too dark. I'm going to blow away the dust. And now I can see where those little sections are that are left behind, and I'm going through and just working on blending away any little patches that I have. But I want to make sure that I don't go too dark in these lighter spaces, so make sure you're using very light pressure. Remember that you have to come in for your second layer with pencil. So for your value scale, you have to come in twice with your charcoal pencil. We're using this as a last chance to help get these transitions to be as smooth as possible, and then we're just barely grazing over it with our blending stump to help get rid of that grainy texture. All right, now we are spinning it back towards ourselves. We're going to add the line from the outermost edge on the right and the outermost edge on the bottom. That gives us the dots to connect to create our highlight and also our triangle of value. Now we're going to come in on the right hand side using a 4 value, like a medium but not all the way black, and we want to help that slowly transition out super lightly, the lightest that we can color, a value 3. Now that we've got that, we are going to take our blending stump. We're going to clean it off on the side. Remember, cleaning your blending stump is one of the most important parts of this practice. Now we are looking at our reference photo and we are trying to create that eyeball edge line. All right, so there is my line. Now, the problem that many students have is that they are not blending this out enough so that it fades into the white smoothly. You really need to clean your blending stump off a lot to make this line disappear as much as it should. So you are just getting this edge to blend out as smoothly into the white as you can, so like no abrupt edges. Now we're going to fill the light value in this space underneath. So we're just taking our blending stump and filling up to our triangle. And we're gonna leave a little gap so that we don't accidentally touch that value and make it much darker. We're also filling in the highlight before we touch that triangle. And we're using just our blending stumps to fill that in with a dark medium. Now I am going to start on the left side of my triangle, and I'm using just small little circles to smudge away the outlines of that triangle and to help the values blend into the layer that I did above. We're using our blending stump to take some of that darker medium and to blend it down and out. Now we are cleaning our blending stumps off on the side. We're going to come through for one more pass with the side of our blending stump, not the point, and we're smoothing. Now we come in for our second layer on the sphere. So we did 2 layers on the value scale. We're doing 2 layers on the sphere. We're going to come in on the right and add another little pass of that darkest part of our triangle. Now I'm going to take my blending stump, clean it off, and I am just barely touching this to help get rid of that texture. We want the values to stay really dark, so we are pressing very lightly with our blending stump so that it does not steal those values. Now, I probably could add just one more little layer of that dark to help that transition. So be looking at yours to see what can you do to make yours look even more realistic. The next step is to work on filling in our shadow space underneath our sphere. So I'm turning my paper so that I can see right when my pencil touches the outside edge of my sphere. I'm going to fill this entire triangle solid black. And remember to stretch your triangle's line all the way underneath your sphere. So take a look, make sure that you have this line stretching all the way underneath your sphere. And then we are fading our shadow into a medium tone as we work towards the edge of the paper. So we are just pressing a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter for that shadow. Now we are going to fill in the space in the background. So we are going to give ourselves the first border. I'm turning my paper so that I'm coloring on the right side of the line because I'm right-handed. Turn it so you're coloring on the left side of your line if you were left-handed. And we want to find the crispy point of our pencil, and we're using that to make sure that we don't accidentally leave any little white, tiny little spots up against the edge of all of our lines. So I am continuously spinning my paper so that I'm giving myself that border on the right-hand side for every area that I'm coloring. And this is just to help with your craftsmanship, making it nice and tidy and crisp. We want these lines to go right up against the edge of our rectangle. And we want to especially focus on the corners. Those are the most commonly forgotten areas. Now that we've got our border, we are going to work on filling this in with about a 4 value, so not black, but pretty dark. We are using small circles to avoid having any lines or gaps that we need to fix later on. So just that small circular motion. Now we are working on filling this in, and we want it to be as even as possible. So sometimes I'll even sort of unfocus my eyes a little bit so that I can look at it and see, do I have any patches that when I unfocus my eyes, they stand out as being lighter? So check yours and see if you've got anything like that. Now we are going to work on shading out our shadow first. I'm going to clean my blending stump off, and starting on the light side of my shadow, I am blending this out, and once I reach that black triangle, I'm going to stop with my blending stump because it's already solid. I'm also going to just do a line of blending along the outside edge on the top and bottom of my shadow. Now I'm going to clean my blending stump off slightly, and I'm going to work on filling my tabletop. So we are leaving that crisp little highlight up at the top, and then we are using small circular motions with our blending stump to come in and fill our tabletop as smoothly as we can. And we want it to be nice and even, no patches left behind. So we're filling that tabletop underneath our shadow. We're going to the other side of our table's edge and making sure we leave that crisp little highlight up at the top, filling in that value. And the final step for the first layer is to come in and blend out our background. Now we are just going to use our blending stump to create our border a second time. Yes, you do turn your paper to use your blending stump. So you need to turn your paper so that you are coloring on the right side of that line, and you're giving yourself that border to make sure that you don't leave any little white spots unexpectedly. So we're giving ourselves this border, turning our paper so that we are coloring on the right hand side. And then once your border is complete, you are using small circles to fill in that background. And you can use heavier pressure here because we don't need this background to stay solid black. Now, this is our first layer for our background. Remember that we have been coming in for a second layer with all of these other steps. So we are going to come in for our second layer, but first we must blow away the dust. Now I can see that there are just a couple of spots that are not filled in quite as much, that look a little bit grainy. So I am going through and really focusing on making all of these edges as crisp as possible. I'm also looking for any areas that were intentionally supposed to be dark that got lighter on accident from me blending them with my blending stump. So for example, I just came back in underneath this sphere and added some more value just to help smooth that out and fill in the spots that kind of got lighter when I brought my blending stump in. So now we are just going through for one more layer of perfecting. We're looking at our tabletop to see if there are any spots that are slightly uneven. We're looking in our sphere, in our background. This is your last chance to really just work on those small improvements before you reach your final project. And I also encourage you to just check and see if there are any spots that maybe need a slight bit of erasing inside of your sphere if you did happen to get a few smudges. Blow away your dust and you can check to see if there are any areas that need a little bit more value, but otherwise this was our final practice. So next class, we are working on your post test. So if there are any questions or any parts of this that you would like some help on, call me over during class today and I would love to help you walk through those steps once more. Thank you guys for watching.